everybody. Welcome to Moms on a Mission. Aristotle once said, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. A new school is opening that we believe will educate the heart and positively change the lives of thousands of students and families. We're going to introduce you to the visionary of this new school. You don't want to miss it.
This episode is brought to you by Dr. Jason Dean and Full Moon Protocol, which provides all-natural detoxification and fights inflammation. Go to bravetv.store/mission to save $20 off your first order. That's bravetv.store/mission. And we would love to hear from you. Email us at momsonamission53@gmail.com or check us out at momsonamission.net.
Our guest today is president of the board of directors and the visionary of Tulsa Classical Academy. He spent the first part of his professional life in the software business and is now dedicating the rest of his life to the cause of expanding access to classical education. Welcome to the show, Nathan Phelps.
Yes,
thanks for coming on, Nathan.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. So tell us tell us who you are and what led to the formation of Tulsa Classical Academy.
Well, I'm just a dad. My own kids have had the benefit of a classical education at a private school here in Tulsa. And as I started to see how that formed their hearts and their souls, I started looking out and wondering why there wasn't a public option that was free to families, and just felt really compelled and almost obligated to do that. And so we started this exciting journey in 2020, pre-COVID. I always like to point that out. This wasn't one of those things that was a response to the crazy of COVID.
Yeah.
It was simply looking at the culture at large and saying there's something seriously wrong, and feeling that classical education was the best way to address those systemic issues.
Yeah. Well, could you tell us what makes classical education different from, say, other schools, other private schools, other charter schools?
Well, when I define classical education, I really like to talk about the overall mission, the heart of it. And the first thing, and this, I mean, I oftentimes tell people, it sounds crazy that these things are countercultural, but classical education is countercultural, namely for three reasons. Number one, it aims to preserve the Western intellectual and philosophical tradition. Number two, it holds that truth is an objective and knowable reality. Mm-hmm. And number three, while it does a wonderful job of preparing students for college and career, it believes that's a low bar, and instead seeks to cultivate wisdom and virtue in the hearts of students so that they will learn to love those things that are objectively true, are morally good, and are definitively beautiful. And if we contrast the aims of contemporary education, what we find is that it's either focused solely on the preparation for that next phase of one's life, which is valuable, or, as we discovered during COVID, is trying to cultivate a completely different set of loves in the hearts of students that are oftentimes at odds with the values of our families.
Absolutely.
That's so great. So Tulsa Classical is a charter school. So tell us more about that. I don't know if everybody understands what that exactly is and how they work.
Well, what I've discovered is that most people do not understand charter schools. That's one of the key educational things that we've had to do, is just to educate families. They oftentimes think that they're synonymous with a private school, and they're not. So they are an independently governed public school. They receive funds from the state, the exact same funding formula that a typical public district school might receive. So, for example, if you have a Jinx school and it would receive funding from the state on a per pupil basis, we receive that same funding. The one exception is that charter schools in Oklahoma do not receive funding from the locality. So property tax revenue, county millage rates, car tax revenue, things like that. So a charter school's revenue is about 60% of the per pupil revenue that a typical district school receives. So it's very difficult in the state of Oklahoma to open a charter school. And that's why we haven't had the flourishing of charter schools in the state of Oklahoma that we've seen in other states like Texas and Arkansas. I mean, even those around us, Colorado, New Mexico, et cetera. And it really was looking at the expansion of charter schools and classical charter schools in particular in those states that made me think, well, why aren't these schools in Oklahoma? And I think, a lot of Oklahomans oftentimes have a little bit of a they look at Texas particularly and go, if Texas can do it, then we can do it. And that was really my perspective.
Yeah.
Texas can do it and Arkansas can do it.
Yeah,
Certainly we can.
sure. Well, educate me on, and I've heard of this a little bit, but why do we not get to use local money? I'm assuming Texas and Arkansas do have the advantage of using that.
They don't. It's pretty common in
Okay.
states not to have access to local money. And I think it's typically a constitutional issue.
Okay.
It's state constitutional issue. Whereas the state money, if you write a state law, which is charter law is state law, then you can appropriate money from the state. So what it really boils down to ultimately is about $5,200 per student from the state.
Okay.
And then you can also receive federal funds.
Okay.
So all in all, what we imagine we're going to receive is around $6,200. Though there's some discussion in the legislature about increasing.
I was just
education
about to
funding.
say, does the School Choice Act that they're working on over in the Oklahoma legislature
Yes,
will
yes.
affect you in a positive way?
in a very,
correct?
in a very positive.
Yeah.
I
What
was
is your
wondering
take
about-
on that? I'm kind of curious since you're right in the middle of starting a new school.
Well, I tend to support school choice as broadly as possible. So
Same.
the last legislative session where there was a lot of controversy about vouchers,
Mhm.
that kind of split my community of people because I know a lot of homeschool folks that were against it. I tend to have a very broad view and say school choice is good, full stop. And so I was supportive of that measure.
Mhm.
I think the compromise that the legislator has come to this year with a tax credit is a great compromise. I support that bill. And it also is coupled with some increases in teacher salary funds as well as
That's good.
state appropriations, which would be very helpful
Yes.
for us. It also is, we have in Oklahoma a thing called Redbud Fund, which is ultimately funded by marijuana revenue.
Mm,
I'm not a huge fan that our
Yeah.
money would come that
Me
way,
either.
but it includes an increase in funding for that as well. So those things would really help us.
Yeah.
That being said, we built our financial plan prior to those legislative changes. And so if they don't occur, we're still.
you're still good.
Stable. Oh, that's great.
So tell us a little bit more about where the school is located and kind of the story behind that a little bit. I think our listeners would love to hear that.
You know, I think back to the way things were in our early meetings and how naive we were. We did not realize how many challenges we were going to face. And we really thought the challenges were going to be different than they ended up being. We really thought there would be some big bad organization in Oklahoma that would come and oppose us and we'd have to fight, with the State Department of Education. And that hasn't been the case at all.
Oh, good.
great.
In fact, we found the Oklahoma Public School Resource Center to be immensely supportive. We found the Walton Personal Philanthropy Group to be, supportive. So we've really been surprised by that sort of the educational establishment.
Yeah, that's great news.
That is
organization.
great.
On the same side, what we discovered is that a lot of the things that we thought we had total control of were going to be really difficult. And that, number one, recruiting a good school leader. We
Yes.
don't have schools like this in Oklahoma. And so finding a school leader who has experience in charters and classical education was very difficult.
Right.
That really took us, I think, 20 months or so.
Okay.
And then the second thing was facilities. When we started this, the TPS had just closed down a couple of their schools. And
Okay.
so we assumed, we'll just move into one of those schools.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that does.
What we did not realize at the time is that by policy, TPS was not going to be working with us. And so
Okay.
they rather those school facilities sit there empty than provide facilities for us. So we started looking for leases and things like that and discovered, these buildings aren't that enthusiastic about having 400, 500 kids
Sure.
in their office building. So we were very fortunate that the McCorkle family, who owns KJM Equestrian, heard about us. We met with them, and we shared our vision for the school. And of course, this is a lovely piece of property at 9815 South Sheridan. It's been there for forever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's been operated as an equestrian center for some time. Most people have experience of going to birthday parties there.
Right.
Yes.
They used to donate their time and provide therapy rides for free
Wow.
for kids.
So neat.
And so they like the idea of being able to dedicate this land to a public cause.
Yes,
The
I
fact
love
that we were a
that.
public school
Yeah.
meant a lot to them. And we also told them that we wanted to maintain as many trees as is humanly possible. That's been more challenging because the city
Yeah.
has their own ideas about where they want retention ponds and things
Sure.
like that.
Sure.
But we've tried to maintain as many as possible. And it's just a lovely piece of property there
Gorgeous.
on Sheridan.
I know I've driven by it a couple of times, but not lately to see the building. But I hear it's going up pretty quickly. I saw a little story not too long on our local news.
Yes, they did a news segment, and it's very close to being in the dry. It's a
Wow.
50,000 square foot building. And what everyone asks when they find out where it is what are you going to do about Sheridan?
Yeah.
Because of course Sheridan does get pretty backed up, and the city has required that we widen Sheridan.
Okay.
And that's not something that the city does for you. You're responsible on your
It's a
own. time to do it.
public-private deal.
When you say widen it, just near your school or?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, the city intends to widen Sheridan, but they don't know when. So
Okay.
we had to take that on, and therefore are going to be widening Sheridan to 3 lanes in front of the property.
Okay.
We're also installing a traffic light.
Okay.
And so I think it's actually going to improve traffic on Sheridan. Don't
Yeah.
quote me on that, but I really hope that
I was going to say, you probably
Yeah.
didn't know when you were going to start a school, you'd also become an expert on
Yes.
building streets and putting in
Traffic
lights,
lights.
Yes.
Yeah.
public works,
City
as well as
ordinance.
starting a school.
Yes, exactly. All the things, and really, you really hope that what you're going to focus on when you start a school is the kids and the
Yes.
curriculum and the faculty, but you discover that there's a lot of other things that come along with that.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, how do you recruit and train teachers?
Well, we're very fortunate. One of the things I didn't know, because I didn't know about charter schools when we started this. I did a lot of research and ultimately read a lot of charter applications. But I discovered that a lot of charter schools start and they don't necessarily know. They don't have a fully baked curriculum frequently. They have to make it on their own, and they have to pay a lot for training their teachers. That's a very expensive part
Right.
of your budget. And that's one of the things that we just love about our relationship with Hillsdale College. We are a Hillsdale member school, the first in the state of Oklahoma.
Great news.
Yes,
That's something to be excited about.
We're very proud of that. And they provide really 3 services. The first is they just provide consulting. They've helped us write our charter application, things of that nature. But the other thing is that they provide training. All board members are required to go to Hillsdale College for board training.
Wow.
I'll be going in late April for my 2nd round of training, along with 2 other board members who haven't been yet. And then they provide head of school training. So our head of school has already been to Hillsdale for a head of school boot camp. And then they provide teacher training. Not only will we be sending some of our teachers to Michigan to go to Hillsdale College this summer, they will also be sending their curricular team to Oklahoma and providing 80 free hours of training.
Wow.
And we're not required to provide their hotels or their food or anything. It's all on Hillsdale's dime.
Wow.
It makes me like Hillsdale even more. I'm a
Yes.
big fan. I was a big fan of Hillsdale
Same.
before you said that.
Same.
And now I'm thinking I want to be a teacher. I want to go back. I want to go to Hillsdale and be re-educated. And just kind of going back, because I don't really want to gloss over what you started with in this interview about, and it kind of segues into this with the curriculum. Could you just reiterate one more time the curriculum that you guys use? Because I think it's so pivotal. And Miriam and I have been talking about this on a couple of shows before, how we feel that this movement of classical education is one of the things that could really move our country go in the right direction. COVID really showed us that we were going in the wrong direction. And so could you go back just a little bit and talk about, again, the curriculum, maybe
Right.
repeat yourself, but I just think it's really important.
Well, I think I had a general sense of that things were going off the rails. Probably for me, it was maybe 2018. Some people probably were much further ahead of me there, but I didn't have any sense of what to do about it and felt kind of helpless. I brought this article here and I'll hold it up for your viewers. But my kids' schools makes this available to us, and I never took it. I just left it out there.
Yeah.
It gained dust. And then I read it one time, and what I discovered when I read it was that I didn't really understand what people meant when they talked about the West. But this article and this whole edition is a special edition, and it makes the case that in order to save the West, we have to save the Western tradition. And that classical education was the only educational mechanism that was focused explicitly on doing that. So our curriculum is a typical liberal arts curriculum. Now, I'm now getting a graduate degree in the liberal arts, and so I can name these things. But, we often talk about a back to basics education.
Yes.
But it's actually more than that. What I've discovered in an examination of the liberal arts grammar, logic, rhetoric.
Mhm.
When my kids started taking logic, I assumed it had to do with computers. I did not know about formal and logic.
Yeah.
And then I started wondering, well, why did they do that? But it's actually very useful to start learning because it trains your brain how to think. That's the dialectic.
Critically.
Yes, and then you get into the quadrivial fine arts, liberal arts, and you have arithmetic, geometry, music in a very broad sense, which would include poetry and theater and things like that, and then astronomy. And the idea behind the liberal arts is that you're taking a student from very low level thinking to very high order thinking. And the original intent of the liberal arts was to prepare students for philosophy and theology, which were considered the king and queen of the liberal arts. So that's very high order thinking. But one of the things that sets our curriculum apart is that philosophy is an explicit part of that. And I know a lot of people that I talk to, that scares them a little bit because they've all, they've got the great uncle or the uncle who was a philosophy major and is just a weird guy.
Right.
But we take a moral philosophy class. We offer a moral philosophy class that's required in our curriculum for high school students. They take it for 2 years.
Wow.
And really what they're asking is, what does it mean to be a good human?
Right.
So in addition to a great math program through Singapore Math, an explicit phonics program, a great history program in the 1776 curriculum, which is provided by Hillsdale College.
Yes.
We also have these wonderful subjects that kids get to explore when they're older. Another distinction between a classical curriculum and your typical curriculum is it tends to be based on great books. So instead of hand a textbooks over to a child and say, okay, turn to chapter 2, what they tended to read is great books. And then you discuss those great books and you pull the lessons out of those. And that's been one of the things that I've loved about my graduate degree work is that it's all been great books based. I've never been handed a textbook. It's been reading great works from Western Civ and then talking about them and writing essays about them.
Yeah.
So, and what I'm gathering from what you're saying is you're utilizing primary sources and learning how to think instead of what to think.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So for example, in that moral philosophy class, they read Aristotle's Ethics, which is a book that's been around forever. And it really lays out what is a good person. And so all of our students are exposed to that. That's not a elective, that's a required course.
Wow.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, when did we start having those what I call regurgitated information textbooks, the big I know we grew up with them. I did in public school,
for sure.
but I don't know when it started. It was never really a good idea. I don't think.
Well, I think that, people are really keyed in on this subject because of the book, The Battle for the American Mind.
Yes.
That's what started our podcast.
It is.
Really.
And of course, what's interesting about that is even I didn't realize that this is something that had taken hold a long time. I would look at it and go, well, they must have done education this way in the 1920s, because your grandparents oftentimes talked about grammar school,
right? Yes.
And of course that's a word that we use in classical education, but according to that book, this is something that started in the 1850s.
Yes.
Both Miriam and I, when we were reading the book, we'd just be texting and calling each other going, I didn't know this, but it makes total sense. This is what's been going on. It was a mystery. And now the mystery, I feel like that, for me, maybe you figured it out before, but it's like the mystery is being solved.
Well, you're seeing these statues being pushed over. You're seeing them really being taught now to hate America. And what the book Battle for the American Mind so eloquently articulates is that you're teaching them, you're training the affections of the heart. You're not teaching them to just know the difference between good and evil. You're training them, their heart to long for good versus evil.
Right. Yes. And that's important because, we used to talk about character education. And I think that we kind of all believe that our schools, their idea of character was consistent with our own.
Yeah.
And what we discovered was that it oftentimes wasn't consistent with our own. That's why we're really explicit about the kind of virtues that we hold up high in our program. And our head of school has really spent a lot of time sort of developing the taxonomy of virtues. And we highlight a different virtue every month in our school calendar. And it's not just something that we hang on the wall.
Right.
It's something that we talk about in class, that we draw from literature. And I had the privilege of interviewing so many different head of school candidates over the last 2 years, really. And so many would talk about how they have integrated that into their own schools in terms of discipline. Instead of just talking about this behavior is bad, they talk about it in the terms of vice and virtue. And they really try to build everything around these ideas. And so our program is a character-based education built around the cardinal virtues, the intellectual virtues, and like I said, one per month.
That's neat.
Mhm.
And I just find this fascinating that, this podcast will be listened to across the nation. So if somebody's listening today and they say, I want to start advocating for that, a charter school in our own city, what would you tell them? Like, where would they even start with something? It seems like such a big.
We'd like to see many more of these
Yes.
start popping up around the country.
Well, I didn't really want to start a school because, I mean,
I can't imagine why.
It's a daunting thing. So I didn't start out like that. Really, my own inclination was to see if other people were doing something, to see if I could help them.
Right.
So I actually wrote an email to Hillsdale College and said, hey, can you tell me who's doing this in the state of Oklahoma? And my hope was that I could write them a check or, help them do something.
No.
It wasn't start the school.
Yeah.
But really, I think that's the first step, is to find a community of individuals that have an inclination to do this. It is a lot of work,
Mhm.
and it is a lot of emotional ups and downs.
Sure.
And for us, it really took us a full 18 months to really get from that very first meeting to having the head of school start and feeling like we really had a sense of where we were going. So it takes some time.
Mhm.
But if you go to the Barney Charter School Initiative website,
Okay.
which is on the hillsdale.edu domain, you can find an email address and email them, and they'll send you back a list of names after they clear it with those individuals to share it. And in the other states, I want to point out, there's some organizations that are already working on these schools. Great Hearts, in particular, is out of Arizona. They now have schools in Texas, Louisiana, and Florida.
Okay.
And then there are other organizations like charter management organizations.
Okay.
I actually reached out to those organizations to see if they'd be interested in starting a school in Oklahoma, and they weren't. And in part, now that I understand our funding situation, I suspect that's the reason they weren't. But we decided, okay, well, if they can't do it, then we will.
Yeah.
And we'll see. I mean, it looks like we're going to do it. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's I'm so glad that you just gave a shout out to those people that helped you along the way in Hillsdale. And we will link that on our page for our listeners and our audience. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but if someone was interested in their city or state, would you be available to maybe talk with them or email with them?
Yes, that's what I mean. I love those conversations. People will reach out, and I will help. I tend to, call them right away because I'm very excited about expanding access to classical education and want to help any people who are interested in doing that.
Yeah.
We also hear from a lot of people in rural Oklahoma. And, in the state of Oklahoma, it's really difficult to get a charter to work in rural cities. So we've brainstormed with them about different ways to do that. It's a challenge wherever you do it, but particularly in a community where you don't have a huge population, because really, your revenue comes from students. And if you can't find students, then you can't really have a successful school.
Well, that kind of leads into my next question. So for people that maybe, I don't know, can't go to a charter school or they're in a rural area, how do maybe we implement some of these ideas of classical education with even kids who are going to, a public school or even the school that our children go to, that we could just implement that in our families?
Well, I mean, there's some great curriculum available, but I also think just encouraging your kids to read books that you think that they can't read.
Oh, I like that one. Oh, that one's going to happen.
My son's going to hate you. Don't tell anybody, but he will.
I love that though. But then he'll thank you.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
In about 10 years.
I'll never forget when my kids were in 7th grade at their classical school, their 7th grade history textbook was The History of English Speaking Peoples by Winston Churchill, Volume 1.
Oh,
and it's about this thick. And my son came home with that, and I thought, what are they thinking up there? There is no way he's going to get anything out of this book. But he did. And not only that, it actually encouraged him to start reading more challenging books.
Right.
So he wanted to read about George Washington. And so he decided he was going to try to tackle the Ron Chernow book on George Washington. Now, he's been working on that for years.
Wow.
But, I felt the same way in my own graduate degree program. There are books like Plato's Republic, Aristotle's Ethics, that always intimidated me.
Yeah.
The Divine Comedy by Dante.
Yeah.
I see those books and I think, well, they're not going to be any good. and I'm afraid that I'm not going to understand them.
Right.
And what I've discovered is that a lot of people don't understand them in their first reading. But those are books that people live with for their entire life, and they revisit and they continue to get good things out of it.
Mhm.
The Divine Comedy became my son's favorite book.
Wow.
And so, when
Love
he
that.
we went and did a college visit last week, and he was talking to the admissions counselor about that, and she said, I don't actually think I've really had anyone who's read all 3 books. I've maybe had one that had read maybe one, but all 3, that's really impressive.
Well, I think so. That's a great challenge for our kids, and even for me and Miriam as parents. It's not just them reading the books.
Right.
We need to pick up Aristotle and Plato,
Yes.
because I don't think, I mean, maybe I read excerpts through college, and I was lucky enough to have some really good liberal arts education, especially philosophy. But I like what you said, to keep that book on your shelf for a long time. It's not like you read it once and you're done. It's maybe you're reading it slowly and challenging yourself.
I think I think you have to read it slowly.
You have no.
It might be real slow.
Yeah, Plato's Republic's about this thick, and I've been covering it in my graduate degree studies, and we tend to revisit it, different parts of it, multiple times from different angles. I had the privilege of going to Rome and studying for 2 weeks this summer.
Wow.
And that was one of the primary texts there as well. But, you also have things that's more accessible. For example, the Federalist Paper.
Yes,
for sure.
I mean, kids talk about them when they quote Hamilton, but have they read them?
Right.
Good point.
Or Common Sense by Thomas Paine, or Democracy in America by de Tocqueville.
Yeah.
Those are intimidating, but they're readable.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that Pete Hegseth and David Goodwin stress in Battle for the American Mind is that kids can handle rigorous training.
Yes.
And when you really think back, even in the Bible, when you think back to the Jewish kids, I mean, they would have to read or memorize chapters and books of the Bible, and they were expected to do that.
Yes.
And so they were saying that if you raise the bar for our kids, they will meet it. And if you lower your bar, then they'll stay there, but they can handle rigorous training.
Well, I think that's another key about what we're doing at Tulsa Classical Academy and what these charter schools are oftentimes doing. It's not like their math curriculum is significantly different. There are secular schools, there are public schools that use Singapore math, but they do tend to couple that with high expectations. And it's really a tragedy that we look at kids and we expect so little of them.
It is.
Mhm.
For sure.
And it's a disservice. And, I don't want to, throw the term child abuse around too lightly, but, are we really giving our kids the best when we say to them, you probably can't do it? And that's something that unfortunately our public schools tend to do for various reasons. And it's something that we do not do at Tulsa Classical Academy. We are there to support the student, but we have high expectations, both in terms of behavior and your academic readiness and achievement.
That's awesome.
Well, I know we are super excited. We're big cheerleaders here at Moms on a Mission for Tulsa Classical Academy and any classical school across the nation. So I want to pull this up. If I can do this, I might need help from Miriam pulling this up. We wanted to pull up your website here. Okay, Miriam. Oh, share. Here we go. And here it is. And just, look at the beautiful building. So this is a rendering of the building. Is that right?
That is a rendering of the building.
Okay.
And it's pretty accurate. The brick turns out it's going to be a little darker than that.
Okay.
Well, it looks wonderful.
Wow.
And this is going to have grades. Remind us of what grades you're going to be starting with.
We're starting K through 8.
Okay.
But we always have been designed to be a K-12 school. So we will have kindergarten through 8th grade this year. That is 5 sections of kindergarten and first grade.
Wow. That's pretty big for the first year.
It's huge. But we just had so much demand, and we had the room for the building to accommodate that. It's 3 sections of 2nd grade through 6th grade, and then 2 sections of 7th and 8th grade.
Okay.
Wow.
So a total number of students in year 1 of 700.
Okay. And then you'll say you'll add a grade every year till you get to 12.
We'll be adding 9th grade in the 24-25 school year.
Okay.
And we'll graduate our first class in 28.
That's exciting.
Yes.
Wow.
So, and on the website, people can find out more about enrollment and just more information. And even if maybe you're interested in, are you still hiring?
Certainly we are still hiring. We're on the enrollment side. We're building our wait list now. We've received over 1,100 applications at this point.
That's great.
Wow.
So we are building a healthy wait list at this point.
Mhm.
But people make different decisions throughout the
Sure.
fall or throughout the spring and into the fall. But I think the most pressing thing for us right now is just hiring teachers. So the careers page, I think, is something I would definitely point people to.
Okay.
Teachers are not required to be state certified.
Oh,
And many people look at that and go, oh, well, does that mean you have a low standard for teachers? And our response to that is no, it means that we are able to hire teachers that have a real passion for their subject.
Mhm.
So if you have a biology degree and you want to teach science, then you can come teach science without having to go through a teacher education program. And we're going to be providing classroom management training as well as the curricular training that Hillsdale is going to be helping us provide. So we have many teaching positions still open. And we are hiring teachers every day.
Wow.
okay. Did everybody hear that? They're
Yeah.
hiring. You don't
Teachers.
have to have a teacher certification. They're going to train you. That's exciting, especially
very
for someone
exciting.
maybe that wants a second career.
Mhm.
Maybe they're in the 2nd half of their, life, or
Yeah.
they've stopped their, I don't know, the job they did their whole life, but now they thought they were going to retire, but retirement's not so great. Or like you changed your course.
They get surprised.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
You were in software and now you're you're
yes.
an expert in starting schools.
Well, I can't give myself. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys throw around these terms visionary and expert and things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. But no, I mean, I'm just a dad who felt compelled to do this.
Well, we're thankful that you did. I'm going to pull that back up. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really appreciate
Thanks for
it.
having
And
me.
so, if people want to get a hold of you or they want to reach out to your website, can you tell us the website? Again?
Yes. So the website is tulsaclassical.org, and there is a contact us link. And if you use that contact us link and send us a message, it'll go right to us. And I'm happy to respond, and typically respond very quickly. Now that we've hired our head of school, I'm not as involved in the day-to-day, and I kind of miss it a little bit. So I tend to jump on those and help people when I can.
That's great. And we would love to hear from you. Let's get connected. Just go to our website at momsonamission.net and fill out your information so we can notify you when new episodes are released. That's momsonamission.net. And email us with comments or questions at momsonamission53@gmail.com. That's momsonamission53@gmail.com.
Moms on a Mission is excited to partner with our friends at My Pillow. According to sleep experts and sleephealth.org, over 50 million Americans struggle to get a good night's rest. That's where My Pillow comes in. They make the best pillows, sheets, mattresses, and mattress toppers. Several years ago, I was having trouble falling and staying asleep due to neck and shoulder pain. Luckily, I heard an ad about My Pillow and decided to give it a try. After 3 or 4 days, I really began to feel the difference. I was sleeping better and my neck and shoulders felt so much better. My Pillow really does help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. Moms on a Mission wants you to get a great night's rest too. Go to mypillow.com right now and use the promo code MISSION for up to 66% off your purchase. My Pillow products are made in America and have a 60-day money-back guarantee and lifetime warranty. Remember, go to mypillow.com, put in the special code MISSION for your special Moms on a Mission discount. Thank you and God bless.
Hey guys, it's Moms on a Mission here. Are you worried about your financial stability and protecting the money for which you worked so hard? The problem is stock market volatility and inflation. You may be wondering what you can do to preserve your family's wealth. We at Moms on a Mission encourage you to reach out to our friend Andrew Sorcini with Beverly Hills Precious Metals. Andrew is the expert in educating you to help you find the right balance of gold and silver for your family portfolio. He made it so easy for me to add precious metals to my financial investments. I simply mailed a check to Beverly Hills Precious Metals and my silver showed up on my doorstep a few days later. It was so easy. Go to bh-pm.com to save a little money and tell them that Moms on a Mission sent you. That's bh-pm.com. Don't wait. Protect your wealth today by going to bh-pm.com and tell them that Moms on a Mission sent you.